Welcome back. At this point in the program, you've connected with prospects on LinkedIn, built some baseline trust by providing value, had an initial phone conversation with your prospect, and mutually determined that there's enough potential in the relationship to justify some real exploration. You've officially moved your prospect beyond the classification of lead and into the category of opportunity. The deal is now yours to lose, but let's talk about how to win it. The exploratory call is typically 30 to 45 minutes max. We often make these web conference calls so that we have the option of screen sharing and the benefits of seeing faces on video, but I will warn you that many prospects do struggle with the technology side, so determine on your own which is best for you and for them. For the record, our favorite web conference app is Zoom. We sometimes use Google Hangouts Meet, but Zoom seems to have the best overall performance and the simplest user experience for new users. Both platforms have free options, and again, if you have the ability and desire to make these in-person meetings instead of calls, more power to you. Before you start taking notes on this lesson, download the PDF playbook, which already outlines the structure and speaking points of the call. And before jumping into the exploratory call structure, let's cover some important concepts. Sale 1. The exploratory call is focused on Sale 1, why there's a need for change. If we end these calls with the prospect being convinced that the status quo is no longer viable, it will be a successful call. The exploratory call is not about discussing our offerings or positioning your company as a great provider. Back to give and get. First, remember the give and get concept from the Connect call. You typically have multiple opportunities to leverage it in the exploratory call, and it can help keep the perceived value seeming mutual instead of coming across as a one-sided survey. Level 3 needs and level 5 whys. When asking a prospect for information, it's key to remember that we do so that we can provide the best and most helpful recommendation possible. That usually requires us to ask tougher questions to get to the root of the pain or the drivers. Level 1 needs. Cover the basics. We want to transition to a larger accounting firm. Level 2 needs. Get into the specifics. We need a firm with ASC 740 expertise and the ability to audit financials. Level 3 needs. Dig down into the meaningfulness. We're targeting a 2022 acquisition and we need 3 years of strong financials to justify a price that allows me to retire. The reason level 3 needs are most important is that they'll be the emotional drivers as your prospect makes decisions. Targeting level 1 or 2 needs can be like a game of whack-a-mole. Addressing one of them doesn't necessarily resolve the underlying motivation, and basing your solutions on them often fails to connect in a way that wins you the relationship. Uncovering level 3 needs typically requires harder and more persistent lines of questioning. Why is 10% revenue growth important? What will it mean if you hit your goals? What happens if you don't hit those goals? And when the prospect's answers don't get down to the meaningfulness of level 3 needs, it's often helpful to keep asking the question, why? In the following scenario, it takes us 5 tries to get to a level 3. Why are you interested in our trade expertise? Well, we're just looking for some expert guidance on international expansion options. And why are you looking for help? Well, we're considering expanding into the UK. Exciting. Why is expanding internationally on the table? Well, we want to increase our market size and revenue, and the UK is low-hanging fruit because of the cultural similarities. Makes sense. Why is this a focus now? Well, we have new investors who are pressuring us for faster growth. And why is that their priority? Well, they want us to take the company public next year, and they think we can double our offering price if we hit $120 million in revenue by Q4. You'll know when you've gotten to level 3 when you hear about the personal consequences of success or failure. In this case, it's the bigger payday for investors if they maximize the offering price. David Winehouse recommends focusing on mindset. Be naturally curious. So you want to treat the exploratory call as an investigation, not an interrogation. Hard questions are manipulative if we have a predetermined conclusion, like, I know they need my services, so how can I get them to see that? Instead, be open to the idea that this discussion is just as much about proving that the prospect is a poor fit as it is about demonstrating that they're a good fit. So what questions can I ask that might show that my services won't really help them? You're not doing yourself any favors by continuing to invest hours in a discussion with a low chance of success. As you're collecting information during the call, look out for signs that you may not be the right provider. Try tie-down questions. They're simple queries you can use to gauge if the prospect understands you, agrees, or has questions or concerns. So things like, does that make sense? Are we on the same page with that? Is that okay? Would that help? You may recognize some of these from our Connect call, but you'll definitely see them throughout the exploratory call structure. Let's talk about GPCT. It's important that we use the exploratory call to, among other things, gauge the potential of the opportunity. There used to be standardization around IBM's BANT methodology, where you'd qualify prospects based on their budget, authority, needs, and timeline. But the exploratory call is built around an updated framework called GPCT, and that's goals. What are the prospect's primary business goals? Plans. What are their plans for achieving these goals? Challenges. What are the challenges they're encountering? And timing. What kind of timeline or urgency surrounds their plans? By basing our agenda on these factors, we can follow a logical, natural conversation path that results with the requisite data to accurately determine whether or not it makes sense to continue exploring an opportunity. That elegant line of questioning is called finding the gap. The gap is any disconnect between a prospect's plans and goals based on their current situation. When we find a gap, the result is real and meaningful need for change, and that's the point of Sale 1. You've said that you want 50 new customers per month and that your current strategy is to use a lead gen service that's providing only 20 new customers per month. There's a 30 customer per month gap here that you're going to have to fill to meet your stated goal. Okay, with those concepts covered, let's dive into the exploratory call structure. We're going to start off with introductions and agenda. So we want to recap what has led to this meeting, and we want to set your agenda. Generally, that's going to mean you're going to learn about their business and goals, share some tips and ideas, check to see if there's value in further conversation, and review and discuss next steps. Ask the prospect what they hope to get out of the meeting. Ask permission to add the prospect's objectives, gathered in the last question, to the agenda for later, and to begin the call by learning about their business first. Don't take the cheese. Understand their current situation. Focus this part of the discussion on understanding the basics of your prospect's business. Let them know that you've already done some preliminary homework, and make sure you have, so that they don't spend time talking about the things you already know. I reviewed your website, but I'd love to hear it from you. Tell me a little bit about your business. Understand their goals and timing. In this part of the discussion, gain an understanding of your prospect's business goals and the timing for those goals. What are some of the initiatives they're working on this year or quarter? Tell me more about those. How will you measure the success of your efforts? If you close your eyes and imagine it, what does success look like in 12 months? Have you set specific targets? What's the significance of those targets? In regards to your initiatives, what's the most important date on the calendar? Then we want to understand plans and challenges. In this part of the discussion, uncover their current plans for reaching their goals and the challenges standing in their way. Gracefully challenge their strategies when appropriate and proactively identify alternate approaches, such as executing internally or by engaging an outside partner. What are some of the other things you're thinking about to help you get to your goals? How are you feeling about those? If we weren't talking today and you were to continue doing the same things you're doing or planning now, how close would you come to reaching your goals? How confident are you feeling that this will get you to your goal? Can the prospect hit their goals on their own? To gracefully challenge certain plans or actions, use probing questions. Have you ever used a lead service before? How many leads a month would you need to hit your goal? How are you feeling about whether you'll be able to hit that goal? And what if you don't? Is the lead service financially stable? Any concerns about putting all your eggs in one basket? Next, share relevant tips and ideas. To make good on the commitment you made in the Connect call, be sure to share some tips and ideas to establish credibility and build excitement. Tips should be simple and actionable, and ideally produce an aha moment for the prospect. To help make it actionable, consider prefacing a tip with something like, there are a lot of things you could do to drive more website traffic to your website, but here's one simple thing you could do today, even without us, to start having an impact. And be sure to listen. As a general rule, you'll have a quiver of tips and ideas ready prior to the call, since many of them will be applicable to all of your prospects. Discuss value and budget. If it hasn't been raised already, you'll want to address the question of typical budgets associated with some of the alternatives you've discussed. This will help ensure that if the discussions go beyond the exploratory call, the prospect's at least marginally comfortable with the requisite investment. There's an outdated sales phrase that says, "He who speaks first loses." In other words, if the prospect first mentions a budget that's more than required, you could use that opportunity to charge more than you would have otherwise. And if you first throw out a price that's less than what the prospect had in mind, you're leaving money on the table. This is rarely how sales works today, and it's certainly not an ethical methodology. This program assumes that you have a pricing structure that can be communicated, if not accurately, then at least in general terms that have enough flexibility to accommodate the varying needs of different customers. Whenever you're discussing budget, it's helpful to justify value by offering a meaningful reference point. This is called anchoring. You can anchor your pricing to things like, the industry standard marketing budget equals 10% of revenue, the cost of hiring a full-time employee, the cost of alternatives. Here's a sample scenario. First, review the gap. It sounds like it's important for your business to increase revenue by $1.5 million this year. Losing your market leader status negatively affects your promotional campaigns and revenue. Is that right? You can anchor to value. To increase your revenue by $1.5 million a year, what were you hoping to invest? Then guide and be helpful. Would you like some guidance? Whether you work with a provider like us or go in another direction, groups like Gartner have benchmarked that most companies will invest about 10% of their growth goal into marketing. So if you're looking to grow by $1.5 million, you should consider investing about $150K in marketing. And again, that's whether it's with us or anyone else. And don't forget to get verbal feedback on the spot. By the way, is that range significantly different from what you would expect? Then we'll close the call. Once you reach the 40-minute or so mark on the call, you'll want to wrap things up. Conveniently, if you've followed the intended call structure, your prospect will have talked most of the time, leaving you with no opportunity to discuss your business or your solutions. Therein lies a strong justification for scheduling a follow-up call. We typically transition with something along the lines of, "We're at the end of our allotted time, and I still want to run through a quick recap of my notes if that's okay." You'll then summarize the goals and challenges you heard from the prospect and check for alignment. How did I do in summarizing what you're hoping to accomplish and why? Do you feel like it would be valuable for me to pull together some recommendations based on my experience with businesses like yours? Then outline next steps. What I'd suggest next is a call or meeting where I help you come up with an approach to meet your goals. I'll review what you shared today and bring back my best ideas. I'll also be prepared to help you translate your goals into achievable targets. And hopefully, I can get some input and feedback from you. Does that sound like a logical plan? Next, try to assign homework to the prospect to help you with your preparation and as a bit of a litmus test for how serious the prospect is at this point. Can I ask you to do a little bit of work prior to our next meeting? It'll make our next call more productive, but should only take you about 15 to 20 minutes. Then have your prospect gather some information for you so that it'll be helpful in the next call. Have them review a third-party article, video, case study, or white paper to get a better idea of the kind of solutions you'll be covering. Maybe it's an Inc. magazine article called "Why Your Data Isn't as Secure as You Think It Is." And that'll help get the prospect thinking about how important data backup solutions are to a small business. At the beginning of your next meeting, ask them what they thought of the resource. If they didn't check it out, that'll tell you something about how serious they are. Then, go ahead and set up the next meeting. How about a 45-minute block starting at 9 a.m. Mountain on Wednesday? Let me send a calendar invite now, and you can confirm that it comes through. Should we include anyone else in this discussion? Then, send a follow-up recap email the same business day, and remember to restate the prospect's homework at the top. Sending a follow-up extends your mind share with the prospect, demonstrates professionalism, and provides another layer of validation to your understanding of the GPCT. When you successfully move a prospect from exploratory call to scheduled strategy call, be sure to update the associated deals pipeline stage in the CRM accordingly. And that wraps it up for the exploratory call. If you have time, jump right over to the resources for this lesson, listen to the sample audio, and download the playbook. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next lesson.